All right, today we finish up our study on Make Marriage Great Again. And so, to finish this up and bring this to a conclusion, we're going to talk about how to make communication great again. So, we're going to be talking about communication skills, and communication skills are essential to having a great marriage. And that's the goal of our study today, is to help us to increase our ability to communicate more effectively. In your marriage, it's so important that you communicate, because if you don't communicate, you'll disintegrate. Your marriage will literally disintegrate when you don't communicate. And we know that from the very beginning that God used words to speak the universe into existence. So words are very powerful. And in like manner, much of the world surrounding each of us has been created by our own words. Our outlook, attitude, and perspective is greatly influenced by words, whether negative or positive. So much of our lives is a product of words that we have spoken, or that others have spoken over us or to us. So words are powerful. So what kind of world have you created with your words? Do you live in a negative world all the time, where it's always something negative, something critical that you're saying? Or do you live in a positive world? Have you created a positive world where you're always speaking positive, uplifting, encouraging things? So we have a lot to do with the world that we live in. A lot of people don't like the world they live in because they have created it with their own words. Proverbs 18:20 through 21. A man's stomach shall be satisfied from the fruit of his mouth. From the produce of his lips he shall be filled. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So words possess incredible power. Power to wound or heal, to destroy or build up. We can speak life or death into our lives with the tongue. We can speak life or death into our life and into other people's lives. We must remember that we will reap the bitter harvest of the seeds that our sinful mouths have sown. This is a very powerful scripture I'm about to read, 1 Peter 3:10. It asks the question, he who would love life and see good days, that statement there, he who would love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. So we could ask the question there, who is it who would love life, who would have a life that they love? And who is it that would see good days? Well, it's the person that has learned how to refrain and hold their mouths in check, to refrain their tongue from evil, and to keep their lips from speaking deceit. So again, we must never underestimate the power of words. James 3:5-8, even so the tongue is a little member and boasts great things. See how great a forest a little fire kindles. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire by hell. That's strong language. But what we see there is what we call the torch tongue. Old Mr. Torch Tongue. And you can, your tongue, you can burn down your marriage with your tongue. It's like a fire. A fire, it's amazing how destructive it can be. Let's look at verse 7. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and creature of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no man can tame the tongue. That's what we call tiger tongue. Your tongue can be like a wild beast and shred and devour and tear apart your marriage. Look at the next verse. It is an unruly evil full of deadly poison. We call that the tetanus tongue. Your words can inject poison into your marriage, a tongue full of poison. And many marriages are dying because of harsh, careless words that are being spoken. A lot of married couples are already emotionally divorced from each other. They may be living under the same roof. They may be coexisting together, but they are emotionally divorced because of harsh, sarcastic, belittling words that they have spoke to each other over a course and period of time, sometimes many years. One man told his wife, he said, "I can't understand how God could have made you so beautiful and dumb at the same time." She told him, "It's easy. He made me beautiful so you would be attracted to me. And he made me dumb so I would be attracted to you." Now, we might laugh at that and find the humor in that, but sadly, many couples today play deadly games just like that with their tongues. Constant put-downs and attacking one another's self-worth is deadly poison to a marriage. And every time you choose to speak a sarcastic or belittling word to your spouse, even if you're doing it just in fun, be careful, because it can be taken the wrong way and received the wrong way. And it's like injecting small amounts of deadly poison into your marriage, which ultimately hurts both of you. I looked up that word tetanus. And tetanus is a bacterial disease marked by rigidness and spasms of the voluntary muscles. I got to thinking about that. Some people truly have tetanus of the tongue. Their tongue just goes into spasms. And they just say whatever they feel like saying, injecting poison into people's lives everywhere they go. Colossians 4:6 says, "Let your speech always be with grace." I got to really thinking about that scripture. And grace is something that we have received that we didn't earn, or that we didn't deserve it. And even though we were lost and we were sinners and we were undone, Jesus Christ, He, by His grace, He gave us grace that we could be saved. We didn't deserve it. And so when you read that scripture, "Let your speech always be with grace," we can take from that and understand it means speaking to people with kindness and respect, whether they deserve to be or not. I mean, that's powerful. Even if somebody doesn't deserve to be spoken to nicely, even though they may have been rude to us, we need to return speech that has grace in it, that will talk to them in a way that's respectful and kind, even though they don't deserve it. And he also goes on to say that our speech should be seasoned with salt, that we may know how we ought to answer each person. And salt has many benefits. It brings healing, it preserves, and it adds flavor, making things better. And that's exactly the way our words should be. Our words should be like salt. Words that heal and preserve and help, encourage and build up and add to, not taking away or tearing down people. And I want to ask the question, have your words been speaking life or death into your relationships? I think it would be good to consider this scripture when it comes to choosing our words and how we talk to one another. For Jesus said in Matthew 12:36 through 37, "But I say to you that for every idle word men may speak, they will give an account of it in the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned." So now that we know the power of words, let's talk about 5 keys to great communication in marriage. Number 1 is learning to care. To have great communication, you have to learn to care. And I want to ask you this. Have you ever been trying to talk to someone who will not look you in the eye, or they seem distracted the whole time you're talking to them? Well, the message you automatically get from this kind of person is that they are not interested in what you are saying. And I'll use this quote: "If you care, you will be aware." If you care, you will be aware. If you care about what somebody's saying, if it interests you, you'll be aware and you'll listen and you'll pay attention to what they're saying. For proper communication to take place in marriage, the first thing we must do is show our spouse that we care about them. And the way we do this is to value what they have to say. My wife came into my office one day, and I'll just tell this story. She came in and I was on my computer, just typing away, looking at the screen, and she come up next to me and was talking to me and telling me something. I never looked at her. I never stopped what I was doing. I just kept on working, and I would just say, yes, I hear, yeah. But I never would really make eye contact with her or look at her. And finally, I looked up and she was gone. And I couldn't understand how come she had just walked away, but I went and found her, and she said, well, you didn't seem to care anything about what I was saying, so I didn't see any use in me continuing to talk to you. So remember this, that eye contact, body language, the countenance or look on our face, and our tone of voice all reveal how interested we are in what our spouse is saying. It's so important that we understand that when our spouse walks in the room, that is the most important person in your life. I mean, that is the most important human relationship you have, is your spouse. When they walk in the room and they start talking to you, we should drop what we're doing. We should turn and look at them, make eye contact, and value that conversation and show that we value that conversation by showing that we care, by listening and caring about what they're saying. With every area of our lives, we must daily communicate to our spouse that we care about them. And the way you show someone you appreciate and support them and care about them is by valuing what they have to say. Sometimes, my wife will say, won't you act like you care about me? Won't you act like you love me? Well, what she's saying is that she wants me to pay attention to her and act like, that I'm interested in her and what she has to say. The second thing for great communication is intellectual devotion, which is listening. So we have to learn how to listen. There is a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is a physical function of the ear. We have that ability to hear. But listening is an intellectual function of the mind to pick up and understand what the ear is hearing. Psychologists say that we actually only receive and understand about 20% of what we hear. You think about it, really only 20% do we really listen to and really understand. It's possible. It's possible to hear something without really listening to it. You can learn how to block things out. You can learn how to tune things out. And to listen effectively, your ear and your brain need to be engaged together at the same time. It is possible to hear what someone is saying to us without really listening. One man said, my wife goes around the house all day long, just talking to herself. His friend said to him, does she know she's doing it? He said, no, she thinks I'm listening to her. Listen, right? That's comical, but we have to learn how to listen. We can be looking at someone and smiling and shaking our head and even nod our head in agreement while completely thinking about something else. Whenever our spouse is talking to us, we must make every effort to block out any distractions and listen to what is being said. It's important to look at the person who's talking to you, because wandering eyes soon lead to a wandering mind. And as you listen, make sure your spouse is the center of your attention. Women not only think with their heads, they think with their hearts. Now, men, if I got some men listening, I'm going to help you out here with some good information in this study. Let me say that again. Women not only think with their heads, they think with their hearts. They talk intellectually, but they also talk emotionally. So here's the thing I want you to get. Don't listen to what they say, but listen to what they mean. Now, that's hard to do. But think about it just for a moment. You might tell your wife, you might say, honey, I'd like to go hunting this weekend. Would that be okay? And her reply will be, well, yeah, that'll be fine. Listen though, how she says it, because what she really means is it's not okay. By listening to what she means, she might say it's okay, but if you listen closely to how she replies, and if you'll listen to what she said and how she said it, you'll begin to realize that she may have said it's okay, but what she really means is that it's really not. Now, that's hard to do, but that's valuable information for us men to get a hold of. We have to listen with our heart as well as with our head. Awareness is loving your wife with your eyes and with your ears. So I encourage you men out there listening, love your wife with your eyes and with your ears. Look at her. Listen to her. Give her the attention that she deserves. If we are not listening to our spouse, they will soon know it. And if this becomes a regular occurrence, they will learn to save their words for someone who will listen. So good communication will come to an end. There are a lot of distractions around the home. Just in any setting, in any home of an evening, there's a television going, there's computers, there's phones, and all can be very damaging to communication. It's amazing. Things that were designed to enhance communication have actually damaged communication. We all talk to each other. We'll be in the house busy and everybody's talking to each other as we're doing things around the house. And that's fine on occasion, but we must have devoted, protected times of good conversation where we are not competing with anyone or anything else. For me and my wife, we'll sit on the porch and talk. We may not have anything really specific to talk about, but we just find a time and we meet on the porch. We sit down, we have coffee, and we'll just enjoy visiting with each other. Sometimes we take a walk. We walk several times a week, and on those walks, we'll talk to each other and share with each other. So you have got to take time to talk. You've got to make time to talk. It's not just going to accidentally happen. You're not just going to stumble in to good communication with your spouse. You have to take and make time to talk. Another good skill in letting someone know you're listening is by how you respond to what they say. By giving a response, you are communicating that you are tuned in to what is being said. Call this active listening. And after your spouse is through speaking and there is an appropriate response, give it. Your spouse needs to hear you respond with what you think about something. This conveys that you are listening and that you understand. So being silent or distant after your spouse speaks builds a wall that stops good, open communication. Dina will be talking to me and she'll be telling me something, explaining something, and she'll get through talking, and I really don't think that it deserves a response, but she'll finally look at me and say, well, are you going to say anything? You could at least grunt, let me know that you at least heard what I said. So we got to be sure that we give a response. Respond. Show that you care, show that you're listening, and respond to what is being said. Number 3, verbal affirmation. This is praise, where we learn to communicate praise. So if we're going to have great communication, we've already talked about this, learn to care. Secondly, learn to listen. And third, learn to praise. Psalm 100 verse 4 says, enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Be thankful to him and bless his name. Our affirmation and praise for God ushers us into his presence. God loves to be in the presence of praise. So when he finds a person that will praise him, he will surround that person with his presence and love. The same truth applies to all people because they have been created in the image of God and also love to be praised, appreciated, and thanked. There's not a person out there that does not like being appreciated or thanked or praised. We all have that need. It was built into us by God. And praise is the key that unlocks the heart of any person. Try it with a child. Begin to praise a child and see what happens. In an atmosphere of praise, a child excels. But in an atmosphere of criticism, they grow distant. They grow insecure and even become bitter and angry when all they receive is criticism. Married couples spend a lot of time pointing out each other's faults. We spend a lot of time communicating to each other what's wrong. It's like at your job, as long as everything's going good, you never hear from the boss, right? But as soon as something goes wrong, the boss shows up to communicate his or her dissatisfaction. And it's too bad the boss doesn't show up when things are going good to show their appreciation. You can have 2 weeks of good work, but all of a sudden, it all can be erased by one bad thing that happens. Your spouse needs to hear you give them praise. You need to try it. You need to practice it. You need to learn how to do it. We must discipline ourselves to thank and praise our spouse. If we're not careful, we can focus so much on our spouse's weak points that we forget their good points. If all we do is focus on the bad points, we're setting a tone of complaint and discontentment within our homes where bad things will happen. No matter how simple or how insignificant it may seem to us, if we will praise our spouse and focus on the good things of our marriages, it will pave the way for good communication that will open the door for God to do great things in our marriages. Number 4, openness, learning to be open. So first we have to learn how to care, learn how to listen, learn how to praise, and learn how to be open. For a man to communicate properly to his wife, he must understand her need for detailed communication. A woman does not want headline answers. She needs the details of the full story. Remember this, men. A woman craves communication. She loves to converse. She loves to communicate. And she loves to communicate with you. Many men often resent their wives that need to know. In fact, us men may feel we are being interrogated or that we're not being trusted. Like, you'll tell them something, you'll give them the headline, and then you may think it feels like they're asking you 100 questions after you tell them something. It's not that they are trying to interrogate you. It's just that women like details. You can't give them just a headline story. You've got to have details. So don't be offended by that. Don't be resentful towards that. It's just the difference between a man and a woman. And this openness and freedom of communication will strengthen the marriage relationship greatly. One of the things us men have to learn how to do is learn how to adjust. Women like I said, they crave communication. They enjoy having that time to sit and talk. And us men, sometimes we're not good at this. But we have to learn how to adjust and learn how to communicate more openly and more frequently. There's just a big difference between a man's communication skills and a woman's communication skills. A man can see another man in a store and they can just say, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, doing good. It's been a beautiful day." The weather's great." "Well, hey, you take care." And that's kind of the extent of two men exchanging communication. Now, two women can see each other and they'll stop and they'll begin to talk about the kids. They'll talk about the grandkids. They'll talk about their hair and their nails and their clothes, and they'll talk about pictures on their phones, and they'll talk about all kinds of different things. And, and if you've ever been there, you'll be waiting on your wife 15 minutes while she's talking to another woman. They just communicate different. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's something to be upset about. It's just the difference between a man and a woman. Sometimes a woman will even push her husband into an argument to get him to talk. Because here's why. She would rather have an argument than be ignored. And I can say this about me and my wife, that there have been times when we were not getting along and we'd had some problems. And I would just get quiet. I would just say, I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to start an argument. I'm just going to be quiet, and I'm just going to hope this goes away and try to ignore it. Well, that didn't work, because after so long of that, my wife would finally say, well, aren't you going to say anything? Aren't you upset? Do you even care that we've got this problem? Are you just going to act like you're just sitting over acting like everything's just fine, but it's not, and you're not saying anything. You're not trying to say anything to me to help us work through this. So she would push me into an argument to get me to talk because she was not going to be ignored. So gentlemen, it will not work. Do not ignore your wife. Keep that communication open. Even when you're having difficulties, even when you're having confrontation, keep that communication open. Learn to be open. And that leads me right into the final thing we're going to talk about, and that's having loving confrontation. So we got to learn how to care. We got to learn how to listen. We got to learn how to praise. We got to learn how to be open. And we have to learn how to confront. All of these things are important in being able to have great communication. Confrontation in a marriage is unavoidable. If you're sitting there and thinking that you and your wife are going to go through life without ever having confrontation, you're going to be in serious trouble and a serious dilemma because it is unavoidable. And this is why we need to learn the skills for healthy confrontation. Some of the greatest damage to marriages occurs during a time of confrontation when a couple is trying to resolve a dispute. The problem is not the confrontation, it is the method and madness used to confront. When we're going to have confrontation, when you know there's something that needs to be discussed or talked about, there's three things you need to consider. Number one, the time, the tone, and the turf. So when we confront each other, pick the right time. Don't pick a time when it's just not good. Have some wisdom and say, this probably isn't a good time to bring this up. So pick the time carefully. Your tone. Be careful how you confront her or how you confront your husband. Don't come off with a bad tone, with a defensive tone where you're coming at them and saying, we need to talk about something because this has gone on too long and I've about had it with this, and we're going to sit down and we're going to fix this right now. Well, it's your tone. Your approach has already put the other person on the defense already, so that it's going nowhere. It's just going to get worse from there. The tone of saying, we need to talk about something. Would this be a good time? And something that concerns me. And I want to sit down and talk to you. Well, see, now the tone is better and the approach is better. And the third one is the turf. Be careful. Don't confront at the wrong place. Don't get around family and have a confrontation around other people, around your friends and family. Don't confront your spouse, at your mother-in-law's house or at church around a crowd of people. I mean, that's horrible to get in the wrong place on the wrong turf and confront each other. Get somewhere where you're both safe. And that would always be your home or when you're alone together somewhere. Make sure you're on the right turf. Ephesians 4:15 says, but speaking the truth in love may grow up in all things into him who is the head, Christ. Anytime we are confronting our spouse, we need to speak the truth, but speak it with love. Proverbs chapter 3 verses 3 and 4 says, let not mercy and truth forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Keep them close is what he's saying. Keep mercy and truth close to you. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Put it on your heart. Be sincere from your heart. And so find favor and high esteem in the sight of God and man. A lot of people they'll say, I've had it. I'm going to tell them exactly the way I feel. I am fed up. And this is an example of not using love or mercy when confronting your spouse. Even though what you're about to say to them is true, you left love and mercy behind. Remember this, that the truth by itself is dangerous. And some people pride themselves on how truthful they are. They'll say, I said it, but it's all true. I know I probably shouldn't have said everything I said, but I said it and it's the truth. If we're not careful, we can cause deep hurt and resentment by our harshness and lack of sensitivity. Therefore, truth must never travel alone. On the flip side, though, love alone by itself is not effective. Without truth beside it, love has no backbone, and our words become mushy and meaningless, and simply a gesture of goodwill in an effort to avoid confrontation altogether, and avoidance is never healthy. This approach is unhealthy because very little will be resolved. Some people never speak the truth while priding themselves on being non-judgmental and loving. But this approach can cause great harm to a relationship because truth is being put on the shelf. Real love must contain truth. Patting someone on the back while they're on their way to hell is not God's definition of love. But getting in their face and screaming at them and telling them they're on their way to hell is not love either. Love is walking up to someone, putting your arm around them, and graciously speaking the truth with genuine concern about a problem or a situation. Any marriage with an imbalance of truth or love is unhealthy. The greater the balance of these two virtues, the healthier the marriage will be. Good, healthy communication is a skill that can be developed. It has to be developed. We have to learn good communication. It just doesn't accidentally happen. You have to develop it. And you develop it with prayer. God, help me to be a better communicator. Lord, help me. Lord, I pray, help me to care. Help me to be able to learn how to listen better, Lord. And help me, Lord, I pray to be able to praise my spouse and to be more open and be able to confront things more appropriately. So we can develop healthy communication and great communication by prayer and understanding God's instructions and using self-discipline. It takes discipline. You have to give yourself to it. The results will be amazing, and your marriage will be great again. Your greatest witness, remember this, your greatest witness is not how you act at church, but your greatest witness is how you act at home. I hope you've enjoyed this series on Make Marriage Great Again, and I hope today's study will be of great blessing and benefit to your marriage so that you can make your marriage great again. May God bless you, and I hope you have a great day.